Jungkook cried in the middle of the concert when Jimin whispered this one sentence. The love that had been hidden was finally shaking in the air. Loudly crying face microphone broken heart. The stadium lights cut out without warning, and in the sudden dark Jungkook felt Jimin's breath against his ear as a whisper slipped through the roar of 40,000 hearts, soft as a confession and sharp as a blade. If I lose you tonight, I'll finally stop pretending. The note Jungkook had been holding cracked in his throat. The crowd thought it was part of the song, the way his voice trembled, the way his knees bent as if the stage itself had shifted beneath him. He tasted metal, felt the microphone slick in his palm, and blinked against the glare when the lights surged back, white, blinding, merciless. Jimin stood inches away, eyes bright and terrified, the kind of terror that comes from truth finally stepping into the open. Sound crashed back in waves, screams, bass thudding through ribs, the distant thunder of pyrotechnics, but Jungkook heard only his pulse and the echo of that sentence. He had trained his whole life to breathe through pain, to sing through fear, to hide whatever threatened the illusion. He had not trained for this. His chest tightened, tears rose uninvited, and for one devastating second the world saw him not as an idol but as a boy unraveling under lights. He turned away, instinctive, a habit built over years, but Jimin's hand caught his wrist. Warm. Grounding. A small pressure that said stay. Jungkook swallowed, forced air into his lungs, and finished the line. The song limped to its end, applause thundered like rain, and the stage manager's voice crackled in his in-ear, asking if he was okay. Jungkook nodded because that was what he had always done. Backstage smelled like ozone and sweat and the faint sweetness of flowers wilting in plastic buckets. The corridor was narrow, walls lined with cables and cases labeled in black tape. Jungkook walked too fast, then stopped, then leaned forward with his hands braced on a flight case. He laughed once, sharp and broken. Jimin approached carefully, as if one wrong step might shatter him. I didn't mean to, Jimin began, then stopped. His habit, Jungkook knew, was to apologize first even when he was brave. His eyes flicked to the open doorway, to the silhouettes moving beyond. I couldn't keep it in anymore. Jungkook straightened. He wiped his face with the heel of his hand and winced at the smear of makeup. You chose the loudest place on earth. I chose the only place where you couldn't run, Jimin said, voice steady now. He had always been like this, soft edges, steel core. He shifted his weight, a nervous habit when he felt exposed. You've been running since the winter. The winter. Jungkook's jaw tightened. The accident on the road slick with ice, the flash of headlights, the memory of a phone vibrating unanswered in his pocket. He had told himself silence was protection. He had told himself love was a liability. He had told himself 1,000 things that kept him breathing but hollow. A staff member passed, eyes politely averted. Jungkook waited until the footsteps faded. You don't get to decide when I stop pretending. Jimin flinched, then nodded. You're right. He inhaled slowly, the way he did before difficult choreography. I'm not asking you to choose me. I'm asking you to stop choosing fear. Jungkook laughed again, softer this time. You make it sound simple. It isn't, Jimin said. But it's honest. They stood there, the noise of the concert leaking through walls like a distant ocean. Jungkook's fingers twitched, remembering the weight of Jimin's hand on his wrist, the certainty of it. He had built a life on control, early mornings, perfect counts, careful smiles. Jimin disrupted that with laughter that came too easily, with care that noticed when Jungkook skipped meals, with eyes that saw him even when he tried to disappear. Why tonight? Jungkook asked. Jimin looked toward the stage, where confetti still drifted in slow spirals. Because I watched you sing about love like it was something that happened to other people. Because I'm tired of loving you quietly. He met Jungkook's gaze. And because I saw you shaking, and I couldn't let you do it alone. The truth settled between them, heavy and warm. Jungkook felt the old reflex to deflect, to joke, to turn away. Instead, he closed his eyes. He listened to the hum of generators, to his breathing, to the way Jimin's presence filled the space without crowding it. I'm scared, Jungkook said. The words small but seismic. I know, Jimin replied. He stepped closer, close enough that Jungkook could smell his shampoo, citrus, and something clean. So am I. When Jungkook opened his eyes, something in Jimin's expression softened, relief threading through fear. Jungkook reached out, tentative, and brushed his thumb against Jimin's knuckle. The touch was nothing and everything. It was a choice. They returned to the stage together for the encore. Jungkook sang with tears drying on his cheeks, voice steadying as the song built. He caught Jimin watching him, not as a performance but as a person, and for the first time in months the knot in his chest loosened. The crowd roared, unaware of the quiet revolution unfolding under the lights. Later, alone in the dressing room, Jungkook sat with his back against the mirror, knees drawn up. Jimin perched on the floor beside him, tracing absent patterns on the carpet, a grounding ritual he used when thinking. Jungkook watched their reflections, two figures framed by bulbs, faces bare, real. "I don't know what tomorrow looks like," Jungkook said. Jimin smiled, small and true. "Neither do I." He leaned his shoulder into Jungkook's. "But I want to be honest tonight." Jungkook let his head rest there. The fear didn't vanish. The world didn't change. But something essential had shifted, like a door opening just enough to let air in. He breathed, and for the first time since winter, it didn't hurt outside. The stadium emptied, echoing with footsteps and laughter. Inside, in the quiet aftermath of sound and light, Jungkook held the moment gently, knowing that love, once named, could no longer be hidden, and that whatever came next would be faced together, without pretending. The next morning, Seoul felt colder than usual. Jimin woke up in his apartment, the faint echo of Jungkook's song still haunting him. It wasn't just music, it was a memory, perfectly disguised in melody and verse. The words kept looping in his mind like a curse. He'd deleted the file last night. Or at least, he thought he did. But when he turned on his phone, there it was again, the audio file named For the Night We Forgot. He froze. Jungkook never sent it to him. That meant the file had been uploaded somewhere. Public or private, he didn't know yet. Panic slid down his spine like ice. The doorbell rang. He opened it, expecting his manager. Instead, Jungkook stood there, hood pulled low, mask half covering his face, eyes burning with something unreadable. "We need to talk," he said simply. Jimin's heartbeat stumbled. "How did you get here?" Jungkook stepped inside before being invited, his voice low. "You didn't answer my calls. And we can't talk about that song over the phone." Jimin clenched his jaw, crossing his arms as if that could keep his emotions contained. "You shouldn't have written it in the first place." "But I did," Jungkook shot back, his tone sharp, eyes dark. "And you listened. Don't pretend it didn't mean something." The room was silent except for the distant hum of the refrigerator. The tension between them wasn't new, it was an old wound, reopened, still bleeding. Jimin turned away, running a hand through his hair. "You think this is brave, Jungkook? It's reckless. If anyone hears that song, they'll know." "Know what?" Jungkook asked, stepping closer. "That I love you. That I never stopped." Jimin froze. The words slammed into him with the force of a confession that had waited too long to escape. His throat tightened. "Don't," he whispered. "Why not?" Jungkook's voice trembled between anger and heartbreak. "You think hiding this makes it go away? I see you every day, pretending none of it happened, acting like you're fine, like I'm just another name in your history. But you're lying. You always lie when it hurts." Jimin turned sharply, his eyes wet but burning. "And you always tell the truth when it destroys everything we built." Jungkook's hand shot out, gripping Jimin's wrist, not rough, but desperate. "Then tell me it meant nothing," he said. "Tell me that night was just a mistake. Tell me you don't still think about it every time you sing *promise*. Jimin's breath caught. The mention of *promise*, the song that had saved him once, and ruined him the same way, hit like lightning. He tried to pull away, but Jungkook didn't let go. "Say it," Jungkook demanded softly. "Say it so I can finally stop." Jimin stared into his eyes, the silence between them stretched so thin it could break with a single breath. Then, in a voice trembling with restraint, he said, "I can't." The air broke. Jungkook exhaled, his grip loosening, but his eyes never left Jimin's face. There was a storm behind those eyes, grief, anger, and something far more dangerous, longing. Jimin backed away, his voice raw. "You think this is love, Jungkook? Love doesn't survive in shadows. It dies there. But that's where we started, Jungkook replied. His voice was calm now, almost too calm. In the dark. Behind locked doors. You told me you felt safe there. Jimin's eyes flashed. Safe isn't the same as free. For a long moment, neither spoke. The tension pulsed like a heartbeat, sharp and heavy. Jungkook's gaze softened, tracing the faint tremble in Jimin's hands. You're still afraid, he murmured. Of what? Jimin asked bitterly. Of being seen. Jungkook whispered. That silence, God, that silence felt like confession and punishment at once. Then Jimin said, almost too quietly, you don't understand what it cost me to bury it. I do, Jungkook said. Because I've been digging it up ever since. There was something wild in the way he said it, like he was done hiding, done pretending. He took another step forward until they were inches apart. Jimin could feel the warmth of his breath, the faint tremor in his chest. Jungkook's voice dropped, low and dangerous. You think I wrote that song to hurt you. But it's the only way I know how to keep you. By reminding me of the one thing I begged to forget. Jungkook's eyes darkened. By reminding you that it happened. That we were real. The air between them crackled. Jungkook's fingers brushed Jimin's jaw, tentative at first, then firmer when Jimin didn't pull away. For a second, the world outside vanished. No fans, no cameras, no stage lights, just two souls circling an old wound that refused to heal. Then Jimin stepped back abruptly, breaking the spell. You should go, he said, his voice shaking. Not until you tell me why you cried last night. Jimin looked at him, eyes glassy. Because the song was too beautiful for something so broken. Jungkook's throat tightened. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small drive, the same one from last night. There's a second version, he said softly. You never heard it. Jimin blinked. What? Jungkook placed the drive on the table. I recorded it the night you left. Before the press found out. Before the company made you erase me from your narrative. Jimin froze. His mind spiraled back to that night, the emergency call, the headlines, the staged statement about creative differences. He remembered Jungkook standing in the hallway, eyes red, asking only one question. Did you mean it when you said forever? And he had said yes before walking away. Now that yes came back to haunt him, embodied in a single USB drive. Jungkook stepped back toward the door, his expression unreadable. Play it when you're ready, he said. Or never. But don't pretend you don't miss me in your silence. Then he left, quietly, without looking back. The door clicked shut, leaving Jimin alone in a room filled with ghosts. He stared at the drive on the table. It was so small, so fragile, yet it felt like it contained everything he had tried to forget, every word they never said, every touch that burned too long, every goodbye that never really ended. His hand trembled as he reached for it. He didn't plug it in. Not yet. Instead, he leaned against the wall, eyes wet, whispering to no one, why did you have to remember? Outside, rain began again. Inside, the silence felt louder than ever. And somewhere, far away, Jungkook was writing another verse, one Jimin wasn't supposed to hear, but inevitably would. The press room smelled like disinfectant and nerves, a wide white space filled with cameras that stared like unblinking eyes. Jungkook felt them before he saw them, the weight of expectation pressing against his skin as if the air itself demanded answers. Jimin walked beside him, close enough that their arms brushed, not accidental, not hidden. Remember, the coordinator whispered, answer only what you're comfortable with. Jungkook almost laughed. Comfort had left the building days ago. They Saturday. Microphones clicked on. A murmur rippled through the journalists like a living thing. The first question came sharp and unapologetic. Jungkook, last night you cried on stage. Some say it was emotional manipulation. Others say it was a confession. Which is it? Jungkook leaned forward, fingers laced. His habit when bracing for impact. It was a human moment, he said. If that makes people uncomfortable, maybe that says more about the system than about me. A flash. Another voice. Jimin, were you involved in what happened? Did you plan it? Jimin's jaw tightened. I don't plan emotions, he said evenly. I respond to them. The room buzzed. Someone scoffed. Another voice cut in. Are you denying a romantic relationship? Jungkook felt the old instinct surge, the reflex to protect everyone by saying nothing. He looked at Jimin. Jimin met his gaze without flinching, eyes steady, offering no answers but full permission. I'm denying the idea that love needs permission, Jungkook said, gasps. Whispers. The coordinator shifted anxiously. A journalist leaned forward, eyes hungry. So you're confirming I'm saying, Jungkook interrupted, voice firm now, that I won't dissect my heart for entertainment. Jimin placed his hand on the table, palm open. Jungkook rested his fingers there without thinking. The contact was small, visible, undeniable. That was the moment the room tipped. Cameras erupted. Voices overlapped. The coordinator stood, panicked, calling for order. Jungkook didn't pull away. Neither did Jimin afterward. The hallway was chaos. Staff whispered urgently. Phones rang non-stop. Jungkook's head throbbed, adrenaline draining too fast. In the elevator, the doors slid shut and silence crashed down. Jimin leaned back against the wall and let out a shaky breath. You okay? Jungkook asked. Jimin laughed, breathless and wild. I think we just rewrote a few rules. Jungkook watched the numbers descend. They're going to be furious. They already are. The elevator dinged. The doors opened to an empty corridor. Jungkook stepped out and stopped, turning to face Jimin fully. Why didn't you pull away? He asked quietly. You could have saved yourself. Jimin stepped closer. From what? Being honest. His voice softened. I didn't fall in love with you because it was safe. The words hit harder than any headline. Jungkook's throat tightened. You say it like that so easily. It wasn't easy, Jimin replied. I just got tired of lying. Later that night, Jungkook sat alone on the hotel balcony, city lights bleeding into the dark. His phone buzzed endlessly with reactions, support, outrage, praise, threats. He didn't open any of them. The door slid open. Jimin stepped out with 2 mugs, handed one over. Tea. Ginger. Always thoughtful. They want us to lay low, Jimin said. Cancel appearances. Separate schedules. Jungkook stared into the steam. Do you regret it? Jimin didn't answer immediately. He watched the city, expression unreadable. I regret the years I spent pretending I didn't feel this, he said finally. Not today. Jungkook nodded slowly. I keep thinking about the fans. About disappointing them. Jimin turned to him. You didn't promise them perfection. You promised music. Jungkook laughed softly. You always know what to say. No, Jimin said. I just say what I'm afraid not to. They stood there together, shoulders touching, the night humming around them. Jungkook felt the fear still there, deep and stubborn, but it no longer owned him. Something else had taken root, fragile, bright, terrifying. Inside, the world argued about labels and consequences. Out here, under a sky smeared with light, Jungkook made a quieter decision. Whatever came next, loss, backlash, change, he would not erase himself again. He took Jimin's hand, openly this time, and didn't let go. The rehearsal studio was colder than usual, air conditioning turned too low as if someone believed numbness could restore order. Jungkook felt it seep through his clothes while he stretched, muscles tight not from practice but from everything left unsaid. Mirrors lined the walls, reflecting versions of himself he barely recognized, eyes sharper, posture guarded, vulnerability tucked just beneath the surface. Jimin arrived late. That alone sent a ripple through the room. You're never late, Jungkook said without looking up. Jimin set his bag down slowly. Today isn't normal. The door clicked shut behind him, sealing them in. For a moment neither spoke. Music thumped faintly from another studio, a reminder that the world kept moving even when theirs felt suspended. They're separating our parts, Jungkook said. Different formations. Different lines. Jimin laughed once, bitter. So choreography is their solution to honesty now? They think distance will calm people down. And what do you think? Jimin asked. Jungkook finally met his gaze. I think they're afraid we'll look at each other. Silence stretched, thick with everything they weren't allowed to say in rooms with cameras. Jimin stepped closer, voice low. Do you know what they asked me this morning? Jungkook shook his head. If I'd be willing to say it was a misunderstanding, Jimin said. That emotions ran high and fans read too much into it. Jungkook's chest tightened. And I asked them why the truth scares them so much. Jimin's eyes burned, not with anger but resolve. They didn't like that. Jungkook swallowed. They asked me to cry less next time. A sharp, humorless laugh escaped Jimin. As if tears are a switch. Jungkook ran a hand through his hair, frustration spilling over. I don't want this to ruin everything. The music. The team. Us. Jimin's voice softened. You think loving me ruins things? No, Jungkook said quickly. I think hiding it did. Jimin stepped closer until there was barely space between them. Then don't hide now. Jungkook's pulse raced. Here. Everywhere, Jimin said. Even when it's inconvenient. The door opened abruptly. A choreographer poked their head in, eyes darting between them. We're starting. They moved through practice like ghosts, bodies executing steps while minds burned elsewhere. Every near touch felt electric. Every forced distance felt cruel. When the music stopped, Jungkook's breath came fast, not from exertion but restraint. During the break, Jungkook cornered Jimin by the water cooler. They're watching us. Jimin took a slow sip, eyes never leaving Jungkook. Let them. You're playing with fire. Jimin set the bottle down. So are you. You just finally admitted it. Their eyes locked, tension crackling so loud Jungkook was sure others could hear it. He leaned in, voice barely above a whisper. I don't know how to do this publicly. Jimin leaned closer. Then do it honestly. Even if your voice shakes. That night, a live broadcast went out without warning. A simple setup. 2 chairs. No script. Jungkook sat under the lights, heart pounding harder than any stage performance. Jimin sat beside him, close enough to feel warmth, far enough to remind them of the line they were crossing. The host smiled too brightly. There's been a lot of discussion lately. Jungkook nodded. I've noticed. People are curious about your relationship. Jungkook glanced at Jimin. Just once. Permission. Courage, we're close, Jungkook said. Closer than we've ever been. And what does that mean? The host pressed. Jimin spoke before Jungkook could retreat. It means we're done pretending that love has to fit a mold to be real. The words landed like a shockwave. Jungkook felt fear surge and then something else, stronger. Relief. He reached for Jimin's hand on camera, fingers trembling but sure. I spent years being afraid of myself, Jungkook said, voice breaking openly now. Tonight, I'm choosing not to be. The broadcast ended in stunned silence. Backstage, Jungkook collapsed against the wall, breath shaking. Jimin followed, eyes bright with unshed tears. You were incredible, Jimin said. So were you, Jungkook replied. I don't know what happens tomorrow. Jimin cupped his face gently, thumb brushing away a tear. Tomorrow can argue. Tonight, we're honest. Jungkook leaned into the touch, heart aching and full all at once. The world outside was loud, divided, unforgiving. But here, in the quiet aftermath of truth spoken aloud, he finally felt whole. And for the first time, that felt worth everything. The backlash didn't knock, it exploded. Jungkook woke to shouting in the hallway, voices sharp enough to cut through the walls. His phone lay abandoned on the floor, screen cracked from where it had slipped from his hand sometime during the night. Notifications had stacked into the hundreds, then the thousands, until the device finally gave up buzzing altogether. He sat up slowly, head pounding, throat dry. For a split second, panic surged until he felt warmth beside him. Jimin was there, sitting on the edge of the bed, elbows on his knees, fingers laced so tightly his knuckles had gone white. He hadn't slept. Jungkook could tell by the way his shoulders were held too rigidly, like he'd been bracing for impact all night. They're here, Jimin said quietly. Who? Jungkook asked, though his body already knew the executives. Legal. Crisis management. Jimin finally looked at him. They're furious. A loud knock rattled the door before Jungkook could respond. Open up, a voice demanded. No politeness this time. Jungkook swung his legs over the bed. For a moment, doubt surged, an old instinct screaming at him to retreat, to apologize, to undo everything. He felt it in his chest, Clawing, Jimin stood in front of him. "Look at me," Jimin said. Jungkook did. "You don't get to disappear now," Jimin continued, voice low but unyielding. "Not after choosing yourself." Jungkook swallowed hard. "What if this destroys us?" Jimin's jaw trembled. "Then we face it together. But don't you dare sacrifice yourself to save an image." Another knock. Louder. Jungkook reached for Jimin's hand, squeezed once, then turned and opened the door. The room filled instantly with tension. Suits, tablets, cold expressions. The air shifted, thick with accusation. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" One executive snapped. Jungkook leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "I told the truth." "You made a political statement," another said. "I made a personal one," Jungkook replied. Jimin stepped forward. "And I stand by it." A sharp laugh. "This isn't about standing. This is about contracts, markets, sponsors pulling out." Jungkook felt heat rise in his chest. "So my humanity is a liability now?" "Don't twist this," the executive warned. "No," Jungkook said, voice shaking but loud. "You twisted it when you sold authenticity but punished it the moment it became real." Silence slammed down. Someone cursed under their breath. One of the lawyers cleared their throat. "We need you to issue a clarification. Immediately. Say it was misinterpreted." Jimin's eyes flashed. "A lie." "A solution," the lawyer corrected. Jungkook felt something snap. "Not loudly. Cleanly, no," he said. The room erupted. "You don't get to say no. You owe this company, you're risking everyone's future." Jungkook raised his voice, heart hammering. "I am not a product you can repackage when I malfunction." The words echoed. Jimin stared at him like he was witnessing something historic and terrifying. One executive leaned in, voice icy. "Then we'll make decisions without you." Jungkook's breath hitched. Fear surged again, but Jimin stepped closer, shoulder brushing his. "Then make them," Jimin said. "But don't pretend this is about protection." The meeting ended without resolution. Doors slammed. Threats lingered in the air like smoke. When they were finally alone, Jungkook's legs gave out. He slid down the wall, hands covering his face. "I think I just ended my career," he whispered. Jimin dropped beside him instantly. "Look at me." Jungkook shook his head. "I'm so tired." Jimin cupped his face gently, forcing his eyes up. "You survived worse things in silence," he said. "Don't tell me truth is what breaks you." Tears spilled freely now, unchecked. "I'm scared I won't be strong enough." Jimin pressed his forehead to Jungkook's. "Then lean on me. Just this once. Or 100 times. Later that night, a statement leaked anyway. Not theirs. Carefully worded. Cold. Distant. Jungkook read it in silence, something hollow opening inside him. "They're erasing us," he said quietly. Jimin read it too, lips pressed tight. "They can erase words. Not what people saw." Jungkook looked up. "What if people turn on us?" Jimin answered without hesitation. "Some already have. And some haven't." He met Jungkook's gaze. "And I'm still here." Outside, protests and support tangled across the internet, arguments raging, lines drawn. Inside the dim room, Jungkook made another choice, not loud, not broadcasted. He pulled Jimin into an embrace, tight and desperate, like holding on to the only solid thing left in a shaking world. "I don't know what comes next," Jungkook whispered. Jimin's voice was steady against his ear. "Neither do I. But whatever it is, it won't be built on a lie." And for the first time since the storm began, Jungkook believed that even if everything else fell apart, this truth between them was real enough to survive the wreckage. The airport was sealed off, lights harsh and unflattering, the kind that exposed every crack you tried to hide. Jungkook could hear the crowd before he saw it, chanting, arguing, crying, voices colliding into one chaotic roar. Support banners rose beside angry signs, love and rejection occupying the same air like they'd always been destined to fight. Jimin walked beside him, sunglasses on, jaw set. His hand brushed Jungkook's once, twice, not quite touching, a silent question repeated over and over. Jungkook answered it the only way he could, by stepping closer. A security guard muttered, "Stay focused. Don't react." "Too late, Jungkook," someone screamed from the crowd. "Was it all a lie?" Another voice cut through, sharp and furious. You betrayed us. Jungkook flinched despite himself. Jimin felt it instantly. Don't listen, Jimin murmured, low enough that only Jungkook could hear. Look at me. Jungkook turned his head, heart racing. Jimin's eyes were steady, fierce even. You're not wrong for existing, Jimin said. Say it with me. Jungkook swallowed. I'm not wrong for existing. A reporter pushed past the barrier, microphone thrust forward. Jungkook, do you regret going public? Yes or no? Security tried to block her, but Jungkook lifted a hand. Yes, he said. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Jimin's breath hitched. Jungkook continued before anyone could twist it. I regret not being honest sooner. The reporter froze. I regret letting fear decide my life, Jungkook added, voice shaking but unbroken. And I regret every moment I thought love was something to apologize for. Jimin turned fully toward him now, eyes wet behind the lenses. You didn't have to say that. I wanted to, Jungkook replied. The fallout was immediate. Headlines ignited. Sponsors released statements. Some fans cried betrayal. Others cried relief. The world split itself neatly down the middle and demanded they choose a side. By the time they reached the private lounge, Jungkook's hands were trembling uncontrollably. He pressed them against the table, breathing hard. Jimin locked the door behind them. That was reckless, Jimin said. Jungkook laughed weakly. You're supposed to tell me it was brave. Jimin crossed the room in 3 strides and grabbed Jungkook by the front of his jacket, not rough, but desperate. Do you have any idea how terrifying it is to watch you set yourself on fire like that? Jungkook met his gaze. Do you have any idea how terrifying it was to keep pretending I didn't love you? The words hung between them, naked and irreversible. Jimin's grip loosened. His voice broke. You said it. I meant it, Jungkook whispered. I mean it. Jimin turned away suddenly, shoulders shaking. I spent years convincing myself I could survive loving you quietly, he said. That it was enough just to be near you. But hearing you say that out loud, he dragged a hand down his face. You don't get to do that and then expect me to be calm. Jungkook stepped forward. Then don't be calm. Jimin spun back, eyes blazing. I'm angry, Jungkook. I'm angry that you hurt yourself to protect everyone else. I'm angry that I had to watch you disappear. His voice dropped, raw. And I'm angry that I love you enough to stay. Jungkook's chest ached. I never asked you to carry me. I chose to, Jimin shot back. Just like you're choosing now. Silence fell, heavy and intimate. Jungkook reached out, hesitant. I don't want to lose you in all this. Jimin's expression softened, pain melting into something unbearably tender. Then don't lose yourself. That night, the hotel room was quiet except for the hum of the city below. Jungkook sat on the floor, back against the bed, phone discarded again. Jimin sat across from him, knees drawn up, mirroring him unconsciously. They're talking about suspending activities, Jungkook said. Indefinitely. Jimin nodded. I know. Are you afraid? Jungkook asked. Jimin didn't answer immediately. Then, softly, yes. But not of the silence. I'm afraid of going back to being half alive. Jungkook felt tears sting his eyes again. I don't know who I am without the stage. Jimin shifted closer. You're the boy who cries when he's overwhelmed. The man who sings even when his voice breaks. The person who just told the world he regrets hiding love. He smiled faintly. The stage never made you real. It just showed you. Jungkook covered his face, shoulders shaking. Jimin moved closer, wrapping his arms around him, holding him through the tremors without trying to fix them. I'm here, Jimin whispered. No matter what they take from us. Jungkook clung to him, breath hitching. Then let them take everything else. Outside, the world kept arguing, demanding answers, demanding certainty. Inside that room, certainty finally existed, not in contracts or approval, but in the quiet, undeniable truth that neither of them was willing to disappear again, and for Jungkook, that was the most terrifying and freeing thing he had ever known. The silence came weeks later, not as punishment but as space. The schedules were emptied. The lights went dark. The noise that had once defined Jungkook's existence faded into something distant, almost unreal. For the first time since he could remember, There was no countdown, no cue in his ear, no crowd demanding a version of him that never slept. He hated it at first. He woke up reaching for a phone that no longer rang, heart racing as if he'd missed something vital. He paced rooms too quiet for his thoughts, fingers twitching with melodies that had nowhere to go. The absence felt like grief. Not for fame, but for certainty. Jimin watched him through it all. Sometimes from across the room, sometimes from right beside him, sometimes with an argument sharp enough to sting. "You don't have to punish yourself," Jimin said one night when Jungkook stayed up until dawn replaying old performances. "I don't know how to stop," Jungkook admitted, voice hoarse. "I was built for that world." Jimin closed the laptop gently. "You were built to feel. The world just taught you how to hide it." They fought. Not loudly, not cruelly, but honestly. About fear. About resentment. About the years they'd lost pretending. Jungkook confessed the guilt that still gnawed at him, the belief that choosing himself meant abandoning others. Jimin confessed the loneliness of loving someone who kept disappearing behind smiles. There were tears. There were long silences that felt heavier than shouting. And then, slowly, there was understanding. One afternoon, they escaped the city. No cameras. No disguises. Just the sea stretching endlessly under a pale sky. Jungkook stood barefoot in the sand, wind tugging at his hair, breath steady in a way it hadn't been for a long time. Jimin watched him, hands in his pockets. "You're quieter lately." Jungkook nodded. "I'm learning who I am when no one's watching." "And who is that?" Jimin asked. Jungkook smiled, small and real. "Someone who still loves to sing. Someone who cries too easily. Someone who's scared, but not hiding." Jimin stepped closer. "Someone who loves me." Jungkook didn't hesitate. "Yes." The word settled easily between them, no fireworks, no fear. Just truth. They didn't return to the stage right away. Maybe they never would in the same way. But music found Jungkook again, softly this time. In late nights with a guitar. In melodies hummed under his breath. In songs that weren't perfect, weren't polished, but were his. One evening, months later, Jungkook played something new in their living room. His voice wavered, then steadied. When he finished, he looked up, suddenly nervous. Jimin's eyes were wet. "That one, it sounds like freedom." Jungkook laughed quietly. "It feels like it." They sat together as night settled around them, city lights blinking on like distant stars. The world still talked. Some people never forgave. Some never understood. But others listened. Others waited, and Jungkook no longer felt the need to explain himself to any of them. He had cried on stage once, in front of the world, because love had finally refused to stay hidden. That moment had shattered something fragile and false, and in its place, something real had grown. Not louder, not safer, but honest. And in Jimin's presence, in the quiet life they chose together, Jungkook finally understood that love didn't need an audience to be worth everything. It just needed the courage to be seen.